Oh, I forgot the microphone thing. Do I continue? Let's see what happens. I'm going to actually try this. Plug that. In theory, the microphone's working. It's been a while since I made a video for this channel. I just I just did the Dodge Hornet startup thing, and I'm trying to use the microphone to see how. I tried two microphones, and it had this weird audio canceling thing that happened between the two of them. And when I listened to it back, it was like, oh, that's no good. So I just tried it with one microphone today, and when I listened back, I was like, oh, they weren't canceling each other out. The microphone's doing something weird, and it caught the original startup, but they didn't capture the whole crackles and bangs that happen when you start this thing up cold. But it did pick up the engine whirring noise. I thought that was really good because I mean I don't rev the engine. Um, there is no clutch, so there is no rev matching or anything that you can do with this thing while you. And I really do miss standard. I should make this video about standard transmissions. That is one thing I have not talked about yet, and that's one thing that I do love. There is nothing in the world like having a manual transmission and a clutch. Shout out in the comments if you agree, because shopping for new cars was depressing because everything comes with an automatic transmission. And when you talk to young people and say, hey, you got a manual in there? And they go, yeah, you just flip it over to M. Oh, my daughter she bought a Golf, Volkswagen Golf. It was an old Golf, 2001, 2002, 2003, something like that. And we were shopping for manual cars, and it had a manual in it. And so she actually went for her driver's test for the manual, and she failed because the test for the manual transmission car is different than the regular automatic transmission car. And they were nailing her on silly things, nothing to do with driving, of course, right? Nothing to do with rules of the road, but just how you're supposed to have the manual when it's off or when you're parked, when all I don't even know if it actually says it in the manual. It probably does because I'm sure somebody's challenged them on it. It got to she went so she learned it on that first run that there's a special thing. She looked it up and she went for the test again and she failed the test again in her manual. Don't get me wrong, she's a good manual driver. She definite race car potential in that one. It's just how the testers were evaluating it and things they were looking for. Oh, that's an automatic fail, not a deduction or anything like that, right? Oh, you left it in neutral. You're not supposed to do that. It's an automatic fail. Things like that. But anyway, she ended up getting her driver's license. I said, you know what? This sounds like it's too complicated and it sounds like it's very subjective to whichever person you're taking this test with, regardless of what they say. Take my car. Here. You like driving my car, you know how it works, and it was fun. There was the BMW 3 Series. So she took that car in there and she just left it in automatic and she did her thing and it all came out just fine. But a manual transmission, there is so much you can do with it. I'm surprised. Like I think cars are being made for people who don't care about driving. And the automatic transmission being removed from cars is proof of that. Anybody worth their salt as an enthusiast of driving or cars in general. Tell me in the comments, would you rather have an automatic transmission or would you rather have standard? Say, let's do that one too. Say it in the comments because manual transmissions, well, for the most part, make driving absolutely fun. I remember this. I was looking for the BMW. I was looking for cars, and I was like, do a manual or automatic, because most of the time when I was driving, it was in stop and go traffic on the island. And so you're in slow traffic and you're in this kind of road, lots of hills, and it was all stop and go. And I remember I took my daughter's golf to work quite a few times, like for the week, because she wasn't driving it. And it was good on gas, and it was fun to drive. I love driving that little car around. And the manual, she would even say, "Yeah, we get in there." And I had to have a gas driving that car around. But driving it after work, home in stop and go creepy traffic, I hated it. I hated it. So when I was looking for a car, I was like, there was there was lots of BMWs, of course, for sale, and that's what I ended up buying, one of those. And I had a choice between a manual transmission and an automatic transmission, and I didn't realize how good um, the BMW. What do they call it? Dynamic shift. It had a dynamic transport transmission in it, and I didn't quite understand everything involved in that. But I ended up going with the automatic because the most of the time I was going to be driving the car was going to be in that stop and go traffic. And then I thought, I'll just throw it in the manual thing and play with it on the weekends, right? But what I didn't know was how good that automatic transmission was in that BMW and how fun it was, because you could shift gears without your hands leaving, no paddle shifters. You just threw it in sport mode, and you could gear down by slamming the pedal down. As long as you also had it in the sport mode, the Dynamics DS, it would shift up at the right times. It would shift down at the proper times. You could have a gas in that car. Uh, you could also, what was it? It was it was down here. Yeah, it was down here, that cruise control thing. And if you pulled back on it, if you engage the cruise control, and you could, yeah, you could gauge the cruise control, and when you pulled on it, it would decelerate the car, the speed of the car. Like sorry, it would decelerate the cruise control, but then the car would follow, and you could. It was like gearing. It wasn't. It was the car was literally braking, right? But the thing is that you could drive that car with two hands on the wheel like a lunatic, and drop gears by smashing the gas pedal, and stop with the cruise control, right down to 30 kilometers an hour, because that car would go down to 30 kilometers an hour in cruise control. And by that time, then you could flip over to the brake to come to a complete stop, right? So you could, like, getting on coming onto a freeway, onto the on ramp, and then slamming it down a couple of gears and launching and getting up to whatever speed you wanted to get excited, and then coming into the next off ramp, you could do the same thing. Knock it down a gear, knock it down another gear with the gas pedal, and then slam on the decelerator, and the thing would just, and then you'd be down to like 30 kilometers an hour, and then you just take a turn. But that's the only car I've ever been able to do that in that had the automatic slash manual thing, automatic transmission, right? Without a clutch. I was very happy about that. You really go through the brakes though. And But having a manual transmission, I am teaching my daughter to rev match as you kind of gear there, and you're kind of got, your feet spread out on the pedals for spirited driving. It was she picked it up right away. She picked it up right away, and the island was a good place to learn that because it had swoopy roads that are up and down, um, tight bends, things like that. And we would take it to certain spots. Everybody knew this. It was funny, but I'll get to that. So yeah, I found these spots on the island where you could do these certain things with you could, you know, do insane crazy things with your car, like certain corners, certain on ramps, certain off ramps. They provided the perfect learning ground for, you know, different kinds of spirited driving, right? Not that you would do a whole great big course driving like a complete maniac, but you're coming up to this corner and then you're set up for it. Let's go do it and let's take it excitedly. And then you'd have a gas and then you'd probably drive down the highway again, come over the overpass and just try it again and do it again, right? And just the corner part, not the whole thing where you're, trying to be a heat bag. But I was talking about this with a guy at work and he was a car enthusiast and we kind of got together and we were talking about it, cars and stuff like that. And I think the topic came up because he's like, I want a V8, I want a V8. I'm like, well, just go buy a Mustang. You want a V8, go buy a Mustang. And he was East Indian. He's like, no, I'm not going to go do that. Every East Indian comes to Canada and they buy a Mustang. I said, oh, okay. Well, then, you know, how much, what's your price point? And he told me his price point. I said, just go buy an old Audi RS4, right? They came with a V8. It was a very fun car to drive, naturally aspirated. Like, go for it. Or, go get a C series Mercedes. They have a V8 in them. There's some of them you can buy the ones with the V8s in them. There was millions of them for sale. Nobody can afford to repair a BMW, keep it maintained, or a Mercedes and keep it maintained, right? He's like, yeah, no, that's all Indian guys buy those. Indian guys buy those. And I'm like, well, Charger, Hellcat sort of thing. Or just go buy an old Charger, SXT or RT or something like that. They've got the V8s in them. I don't know what they're like to drive. I was never a fan of them, but I found out, they are a good car to drive and things like that. They are still an American car. They're still not up to par to keep up with, anything European or anything Japanese that's a V8 and sporty. But there was a lot of them. They were relatively cheap to repair and fix and maintain, and it looks like a normal car, so you're not attracting attention. But then I found out, they're charging the same price for those things as they are actual really good cars without offering anything extra, right? Just just the price. Anyway, but the V8 thing, yeah, and got onto the little roads and you get into that with the gears and how to change gears and is it decreasing radius right hander? Okay, well this is what you do. And it's a hairpin. Well, you got to boot and enter the apexes on the thing, and then you slam it through after you get past that, gas, you know, and you don't have to go through all the gears. You just take it from third or take it from fourth, throw it into second while you're on the brakes, and it all works out. So much fun driving those. And I keep taking this thing out and trying to, I'm talking about the engine noise in the last video, and I'm talking about the engine noise in the last video, and I was like, the whole thing too is like, I never rev the car. I've revved it a couple of times now trying to make this video where I just and it's not the same as when you're driving and you got the clutch in and you're going to throw it into a lower gear, but so you just tap the gas pedal and you bring the revs up to hit and then pop the clutch and it all right. But hearing that, getting the little revs in and stuff, it's exciting. It's fun to hear. It's, you know, just making a video of engine, startups. I've sat and watched videos of, Nissan GTR startup, Ferrari whatever startup, the Pagani startups. Guys go and make those videos of these startups, and it's like, why is that so cool listening and watching that? Somebody's making and people are watching it, and I'm liking it, I'm subscribing to these, and it's hilarious, right? But I think that's the fun of manual transmissions. It's You're definitely a part of the car. You feel integrated, you're sewn into the driver's seat, your hand, oh yeah, like the whole thing. And you're active, like you're actively part of the car. And I'm sitting in this Hornet, and it is a fun car and all of that. And it could be funner with a manual transmission, definitely. Well, depending on the transmission you would put in it. But then, it's like boo, 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 and it's like, oh, okay, I'm still relaxing in my seat, and it's going like crazy, and I don't really feel that connected as if it would have had a manual transmission, where you got to do the work, 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 right? And because you're doing the work, you're going to make it fun. Let's do some extra pedals, right? Let's do some extra gas pedals. Let's do this, right? Yeah. I have tried to do that where you're gearing down in the manual thing, and it doesn't do the same thing as in a manual transmission. It just kind of keeps your speed, and just the engine doesn't slow the car down. I don't know. Maybe it's the weight. Maybe it's the weight. I don't know. But it's just not the same. It is definitely not the same. Let me know if I'm right or if I'm crazy down in the comments. Um, if you like manual transmissions, hit the thumbs up button. You better be doing that. Consider subscribing, because all I do here is talk about car stuff and a lot of stuff about the Hornet too. If you're into Hornets, it's probably the only channel out there that talks about a Hornet. See you on the next one.